Hello and welcome to a session here on VidCon now, behind the scenes, mastering the new world of interactive storytelling. Because gosh, it's been a world. It's been really exciting, and I'm very excited to talk to my friend Bernie Sue, who created a show with me once upon a time called the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice into video blogs, into sort of a native YouTube format. And Bernie has continued to do that work in a lot of different ways, most recently with a show called Artificial, which is a live streamed experience on Twitch TV that basically sort of drags you into a world of mystery and intrigue, but is actually filmed live and interacts with the audience as it exists, which is again like a completely new way of doing storytelling. So I'm really excited to talk to Bernie about some of our history together, making stuff, and also what he's been up to since then. Because I just love to get a little bit deeper into how storytelling can work in different media. I feel like we're at the very beginning of figuring out how exactly that functions. And also get into Bernie's brain about how he thinks about storytelling generally. So without further ado, I would like to invite Bernie up onto the stage with me so that we can chat about our history together. Are you here?
Yes, here I am. I'm on the
Hey,
stage, walking on.
it's great to see you.
Great to see you, my friend. Oh man, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Obviously, as you said, we have a lot of history together.
Yeah.
We did a certain series. We share the poster, signed by each other, amongst other amazing, talented people.
Yeah.
And you know, I think I was at VidCon 2 when I saw you. Or 3.
Was that what was
Yeah.
tell me how we met. How did we meet?
So we met at this tour of a Digiday, the YouTube musical tour, right?
Uh-huh.
In Mountain View.
Yeah.
And I honestly I did not know who you were.
I didn't know who you were.
Yeah, and then we had this conversation, and I said
We were
just
at a bar.
at a bar,
and a lot of drunk YouTubers were there, and
yep.
we were not drunk. And
we were not drunk.
If we were not very drunk. And I was like, I have an idea. And you see, I hadn't found the right person to talk to about this idea yet. Because like for me, it's you know, there's a knowledge of YouTube that I had that made me think this is a good idea. But what I didn't have was a knowledge of like production, fiction, screenwriting, storytelling at all. And so I knew that I didn't have all of the skills necessary to pull this thing off, but I knew that it was a good idea. I knew it was probably a good idea from what I knew about YouTube. So that was a very sort of
history would say it's a good idea.
So yeah, I mean, it might not have been. You could have been like, "That's a terrible idea," and here are all the reasons. That happens to me all the time, but you weren't. You were super excited about it. Were you super excited about it?
Yeah, I honestly was. I've always been a kind of like, I love the challenge of it. So the idea was, in my memory, was could you do a book on YouTube as a YouTube series? You tell a book with the kind of, at least I considered it as like, oh, we've told books as movies, we've told books as, you know, comic books and video games. Of course, you could do a book on YouTube. And then the next part in my head with logistics was like what defines it as YouTube? And that's when I think you brought up things like, you know, vlogging and interactivity and like that format of being kind of bring the audience in. And it was like, to me, I was super intrigued by that. I thought that was like a cool challenge as a storyteller. And just so my background, like I started as I moved to LA to be like a screenwriter, and I started to move into online video, but keeping that screenwriter roots of like, I'm like a filmmaker or whatever, or a storyteller, but being open-minded to new formats of how to do it. So eventually when you said, let's do Pride and Prejudice on YouTube, my mind did not go to, let's make a 2-hour movie and chop it up into 2-minute segments and put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
My mind went to, okay, how am I going to tell Pride and Prejudice as video blogs? And that's, I think our synergy was right away, because I feel like that's what you want to do.
Right. And like that might not be the first place that a lot of screenwriters' brains would go to, where it's just like, well, let's make the thing and then upload it to YouTube, versus let's make this thing as if it was YouTube. And And I love that. And it's also like it presents all these like very particular challenges, because really what a YouTube video does is like you upload it, and like there's all kinds of things that make a thing a YouTube video. But one is that you upload it, and then like like the next video kind of oftentimes responds to like what happened in the chat. And of course you can't duplicate that precisely, because we weren't like filming these one at a time.
Yes, that's true.
Doing them, like what was a batch of Lizzie Bennett's?
We were doing them 8 at a time.
8 at a time.
8 at a time. And yeah, that's it. We were doing 8 at a time. And so the idea was 2 a week. We would film once a month. And then, but we would film that next block as late as possible, so we could build in as much as possible.
Going on.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how we did it.
And then there was also an element of like, no YouTuber is just on YouTube. You're also on these other platforms. And so building in the sort of like narratives that sat on top. And so if you were watching it as it was coming out, which now we realize is the exception rather than the rule, because that show has had so much viewership after the fact, which is usually not how YouTube works, then you got this sort of like extra bonus of being able to watch some narrative play out on Twitter.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was the idea, that a YouTuber is more than just a YouTube platform. They use all the platforms. They use Twitter. They use Tumblr. They use Facebook potentially. Instagram didn't exist. This is how old the show is. When we were doing the show, Instagram did not exist. And we had, like together decided that, and with some guidance with some of our team members, to guide it like to the buzzword is transmedia. It's like, how do you present the story across multiple medias in the same time? And so for Lizzie Bennet Diaries, our Twitter presence was very strong, probably kind of legendary in the historical context of it. I will also in contrast say our Facebook presence was not that legendarily strong as far as the impact of it, just to be fair. I think criticism is a worthy thing. And our Tumblr presence was very strong. I think we were not a top 10 YouTube channel, but we were a top 10 Tumblr.
That's wild.
According to them in that space. So in that year, so like that's how powerful that audience was there. So we had these grand experiences blown out, and I think the idea of the storytelling of it was that from the beginning we were native to the format. Like we weren't, as you said, trying to take a movie and just say, here it is played here. We were trying to design the story for the constructs of the format for the platforms. We used Twitter as Twitter. We didn't use Twitter as a video player. We used Tumblr as Tumblr. We used YouTube as YouTube, and some were more effective than others. And that's how we did the show.
Yeah, but basically like racking your brain to say like how many of the different ways in which, people who make content on the internet, how many ways can we duplicate that in a fictional format? But also an interesting thing with all of this is budget, because fiction generally costs a lot of money.
Correct. Yes.
Especially drama. And one of the things that I was like secretly most proud of is that we were able to make Lizzie Bennet Diaries and not lose money. Didn't like make a ton of money or anything, but we were able to like have that thing sustain itself, and instead of just being sort of like a labor of love. And can you talk a little bit about the, how to work inside of like, there's the constraint of the format, but there's also the constraint of like the format doesn't monetize well.
Yeah. So if you were to say, so looking at Lizzie Bennet Diaries in the time, and I think this is actually ironically still the same, like if you're saying monetization off of YouTube, you need to get a certain number of views per video. So if you're spending $1,000 per video, you need to make, you have to have like 2 million views in order to like break even, I think is kind of the rule of thumb. Right. And that's really hard to do. I mean, like even now in the history of Lizzie Bennet Diaries, 8 years later, not all the, there's 100 videos, very few of them are over 1 million views. So, so even the constructs of that, so you have to scale your production. And of course, the content farms of the day do this really well with their just content farming. But we're doing a scripted narrative series with writers and actors and editing, and not that they don't have editing, but like we have the pieces of a story, of a narrative story, and we're trying to compress and get the volume out with minimal costs. And it's just one of the things about the show is that while the show was running, and even sometimes the show was not, when the show was over, like everybody got paid. Like everybody there's no one working for free. That was something I was really instilling. True, in the beginning they weren't getting paid very much, but we did scale up, and as we succeeded, we did ramp up. Whether you think it was enough or not, that's up to you. But it was all there. like the processes were where the intentions of the processes were there. Yeah. So now the kind of, okay, why did we shoot 8 at a time? Because if you condense 8 episodes into one production day, now you're looking at production days. And those of you who know production know that days are what kills you, right? You have shoot one day, you add a second day, that's like you're adding 60% more money than the first day. And it just compounds. So if you can compress your production to get a high volume in one day, now you have a shot at reaching sustainability. Right. And even with Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and that was a hit, like a once in a generation,
as big as they get.
Once in a generation hit, and we were barely sustaining. Like you just to give you the history. Like you, Hank, you put the initial money, and I took that initial money and got us skeleton, but still, giving people money and paying them, got us to 24 episodes. And we were able to demonstrate in those first 24 episodes, 12 weeks of content, that this is successful, sustainable, and can keep going. And then as it got bigger, we were able to raise those budgets and we were pulling them from YouTube AdSense, of course, and then eventually our partners, Kin Community, who eventually invested in the show, and then reached sustainability, where the irony was that the budgets did go up as the show got successful, so we paid people more, and Kin invested and put in the budget to finish the show, but Kin didn't make its money back until much later than after the show ended. Like not like years, but like months. So this is after the 200th anniversary of Pride and Prejudice. Like all these big events had happened, and it took all that just to get to sustainability. So that was really hard. We also did not have we weren't as versed as today's influencers are, or today's, where you had these multiple revenue streams like shooting
up. A lot of that
stuff
stuff didn't exist as much back then. Like we did merch and we did some brand deals, and but that was all, that infrastructure was very new.
Very new. Affiliate marketing with YouTube was very new at that time. We didn't do it for Lizzie Bennet Diaries. We did it for the second show, Emma Approved. But it was, I like to say that even though it's a revered show and it's like, and people still tweet about it and so forth, it's like, I actually still think it was a little before its time.
It's really interesting. Like it was a little before its time in some ways, but like it was also like exactly of its time too, which is something that I really like about it. Like going back to watch it, it feels like going back into that time. So there were, the part of it that was before its time was like, how do you make money off of anything on YouTube? But the part of it that was like perfectly for its time was like, it was designed to exist in the way that the internet existed in that moment, which has changed a lot. And
definitely,
I love to go back though, because that was like my favorite time. It was my favorite time of YouTube.
That warms my heart, man. Knowing how much you've done and how much I go like, Hank's just so doing his thing.
Such a chill time in online video. I like that we decided to do this weird thing. And
it changed so many people. Like it like influenced so many people. You have people wrote theses about it. It's like, take away the accolades. Like the impact it had on people is what I'm most proud of it. And I mean, it also inspired a lot of similar storytelling.
And I'm interested to hear some of your thoughts about like similar projects that happened afterward, and like what factors do you think hold back dramatic fiction on the internet generally? Because it's hard. Like it's not a lot of success in this space.
So let's clarify a couple of things here. First thing, so Lizzie Bennet Diaries is kind of, we describe it as Pride and Prejudice as a YouTube series.
Yep.
Vlog interactive. Okay. So kind of two things happen. One that you know about, which is a lot of people said, oh, we could tell books on YouTube too. That's, you know, that's just, we can shoot in our own rooms, we can cast ourselves, and we can tell Count of Monte Cristo or Jane Eyre or whatever, right? Like pick any public domain book.
Which is just like, I think that it is great. And you learn a huge amount in that process.
Yes, absolutely. And so those came out of the woodwork. And so when you have volume, and like, and I'm very clear, I'm going to clarify class that I am completely supportive of anybody who wants to do it. Okay. Completely supportive, but I can be critical about the execution, as you should be critical of the execution of my work or any of our work, right? Your work too, Hank. Yeah. Is so like, if you just wrote a book, if you don't like your book, you know, okay, that's okay, right? Like,
I love reviews. That's how I learn.
Yeah. They didn't like your book. So that's fine. That's content creation. So a lot of, storytellers, you know, experienced and young and new, tried the format, and it did kind of, I think it did kind of flood the we'll call it market a bit.
Right. Yeah, there probably was never that big of a market. Like the like people who watched Keira Knightley's Pride and Prejudice and were like, I have not had enough of that. Like, that's a lot of people, but it's not like most people.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was that. And then you have because everybody's trying it, you have a depression in kind of overall quality. Okay, so it's hard to say like what rises to the top. I think, and this is something that I still very early when we started working together for Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Look, like, you know, we are, I think we're both very qualified in what we do. But I will say that I wasn't trying to do with the minimalist budget possible. I was trying to make the best version of Pride and Prejudice I could make. Right. Like, I was trying to all in it.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, you were working on it full time. Yeah, like, that was your only thing. Yeah,
it was. I was trying to will it to be the greatest thing. Now, I'm not saying it was, and I'm not saying I succeeded. I'm just saying that was the drive. That was
the only thing.
The killer instinct of it versus having it be, you know, maybe it's a hobby to somebody. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they're just trying it out. It's a different. It's a different kind of beast of that. And the second thing that happened too was that I thought this was funny in kind of traditional Hollywood, where I hear people, it's like, yeah, I heard this pitch today. It's like someone pitched Dexter meets Lizzie Bennet, and I was like, what? Like, at a network, like at a network, like. They're pitching the type of the show.
Yeah, we created a genre. It's got exactly one thing in it. It's got more than one thing in it. But
so that's kind of the the fallout of that was that people tried this, and I think it's still a viable format. It's just I one thing that I think I embrace very much in my personal just workflow is that I really embrace the constraints and try to make them my advantage. And I'm not sure if everybody else does that. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying I really try to make the constraints my advantage.
I think that is in any creative endeavor so important, because if you don't look at your constraints, you don't have a good idea. Like, there's no such thing as a good idea that doesn't take into account like reality. It'd be like, man, what if we started a moon hotel? And it's like, well, yes, that would be great. I love the idea of a moon hotel, and I think it would be successful as long as you solve the problem of like the commute. Like, getting to the moon is hard, but so like you need to be aware of the constraints. And I think I've watched a lot of times people be unaware of constraints. And oftentimes that constraint is budget, but it's oftentimes also skill. And like, I knew full well I wasn't going to produce Pride and Prejudice as video blogs on my own. Like, I lived in Montana. I had no screenwriting background. I had no production background. Like, none of that was going to I knew how to coil a cable, and that's about it. So I needed...
Good skill.
Yeah, it is. Never go onto a set if you don't know how to coil a cable. And so like I knew that like I had a skill constraint, and so I was looking for some way to fill that, or to solve that problem. And you know, medium that like a media that you are producing inside of is itself full of constraints. You know, when I'm writing a book, I'm aware that it has different constraints than a video. When I am, doing a Crash Course episode, I'm aware that it has different constraints than doing a SciShow episode. Like there are all the, like, you have to be hyper aware, like in problem solving generally, you have to be very aware of the problem you're trying to solve and the tools that you have to solve it with. And if you work inside of that, that's when the beautiful stuff happens.
My favorite quote from Orson Welles: "The enemy of art is the lack of limitation."
Yeah.
I
create artificial limitation when I'm writing fiction. I have to. Like, I have to say, this is a piece of the book that I'm not going to change. And if if it makes things inconvenient, whatever, I've decided that this is an unchangeable part of the book, because if everything is malleable, nothing gets done.
Yep.
So yeah, I truly believe all of that. And like Lizzie Bennett was textbook course in understanding limitations. So do you think that there is something about drama and the internet that is just hard, that is just harder than doing it in other media?
I mean, yeah, because you have to have, for drama, you have to have this immersion that it feels like it's reality, like it's real. And that's the trickiest thing, because with comedy, I mean, yes, comedy is hard too, in its own different way. Executing good comedy is extremely difficult, but comedy, you can like get away with things for being not as serious. Okay. And in drama, if something is not played as serious, it just blows the illusion of it. So I think it's tricky that way. I think with the resources of it is hard. I remember you had theorized that you could do a version of Lizzie Bennett Diaries with literally one actor performing all the roles. And I'm like, yes, you could. I'm not saying that would have been better.
Do it Superwoman style.
Like,
like Happy Slip. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Happy Slip. You use Superwoman. Everybody like who does that. So you could do it that way. And that's a choice. I would have been taken as seriously, not that Lizzie Bennett Diaries universally taken seriously.
Had to have been comedy. Like, it would have had to have been more comedy. It would have been very difficult to, because if you don't have Daniel on screen with Ashley, like, you don't get the chemistry, you don't get the spark, and like, you need that spark.
You need the spark, you need the romance, you need the drama between the sisters. Like, that's the stuff you get when you're literally next to each other and you have they're in an argument. There's dramatic, there's crying, there's laughing. Like, that's all. There's these things you need, and that comes with two key things that are in, I like to think, hopefully most of my work is really quality writing and really quality acting. Sure, I can take a lot of credit with the writing, but the acting is the actors. They're the ones who are great. Yeah. And so I contend that those are the two pillars of Lizzie Bennett Diaries that make it stand. And hopefully the other work that you like of mine, hopefully, which is the acting and the writing are this level.
Right. And also the awareness of both of those things of the medium that they're inside of. Like, if you do not feel like you're naturally meshing into the culture and the general experience of what it's like to watch a YouTube video or what it's like to watch a Twitch stream, then like that immersion is even harder. So I want to talk about artificial now because of that.
Sure.
So when you shift from like, I've been making stuff for YouTube and like trying to understand that meaning, but also like the fact that you had to get your brain into like what a YouTube video is like. When you shift that to a whole new, like, how much time do you spend like consuming the content, trying to understand the vibe and the culture before you can even feel like you're ready to start writing inside of that medium?
It takes some time. So let's define this. So artificial is a Twitch, a Twitch original series. It's on Twitch. It's a scripted drama. It's a live scripted drama. So we do it live. It's interactive. It has audience consequential polls and questions and so forth. So and it's a beast of a series. We do a 2-hour stream every week, and like 80% of it's scripted. And performed, and 60% of the show is performed live, or maybe more than that actually now. And so it is an absolute beast of a show. But as I can confidently say, when Lizzie Bennett Diaries is on YouTube, there is no other place that show could have lived at that time and been that. Yeah, no question in my mind. You could do it now on Facebook. You could do it now and so forth because of different tech and platform evolution. today, the way artificial is designed, it could not be anywhere else but Twitch. Even though you can, you can live stream on YouTube, you can live stream on Facebook, but the way we designed the show, it just cannot exist anywhere else. It is a Twitch unique experience, and that's just my belief on it. We also do the show remote because we're in COVID. Okay, so
that's one of the questions we got. Yep.
Yeah, adding complexity, your company, like to this whole thing. But like all the actors, who are performing in the show, like every show has like 10 actors, and and 6 of them are live, and so they're all performing remotely and all that. It's so difficult to do. Yeah. And so to answer your question of okay, so it's on Twitch, so it has to feel like a Twitch show. It has to feel like it can only be on Twitch. What does that mean? I actually I'm not saying every day for years, but I was planting the seed years ago. And I'll tell you this one story. So I had got invited to TwitchCon Nerd Convention as a guest, just a guest. Nothing, not to speak on any panels or anything. Just like, hey, come check it out. Do you want to come? It's like, yeah, I would love to come. And so I'm there and I'm going in my mind, okay, I want to understand this. Like, I want to understand. I'm just going to listen and watch the games and watch the panels and so forth. And I ran into Diane Hutton, who plays Harriet on Emma Approved, and who is a Twitch streamer now. And so she sees me and I was like, hey, what's up? And she kind of like looks at me suspiciously. It's like, what are you doing here? and I was like, take a guess. Just take a guess. And she's like,
you tell me.
She's like, huh? And then we hung out, right? Like, so, and then, a year or whatever, 2 years later, Artificial was born and here we are. So it does take time. And there were times where I made my own Twitch account just to stream a game that I was playing, just to see what that feels like. So there was a lot of immersion into this. And these are, Lizzie Bennet Diaries and Artificial are completely different shows. The only similarity is that they're both interactive, or immersive, if you want to say that way. So,
right. Well, the skill set that you've developed is like, how do you make, fiction, narrative fiction for a platform that isn't natively a place where narrative fiction was like meant to be. So that is to me the sort of like seed and like of the expertise that you're building, of the brand that you've built as like, who is Bernie Sue. And so it's like the writing skill is there, but all like the exceptional skill, the one that like nobody else has, is like, how do you imagine a new platform in a way that allows for storytelling on that platform? I'm going to ask the VidCon team to queue up the artificial trailer so that we can watch that in a second, so that give people a vibe of what the show is like, because it gives you goosebumps. And and like that, I think that is like, is there another platform that you're thinking about that might be a place where good fiction can happen?
I think good fiction can happen on any platform. So does the platform, make sense for something that for me personally, that I'm inspired to do on that platform, or is the platform motivated to have to come in and ask me to do it? So for Twitch, it was like, hey, come play with us, see what you can do here.
Nice. And so let's watch the trailer and see what kind of playing you ended up doing.
Maybe you've never heard of Artificial. Maybe you didn't know I was a robot. Maybe you did. Maybe I'll become sentient. Maybe you'll help me. Maybe you'll try to stop me. Maybe you'll decide my name. Maybe you'll change everything about me. Maybe you'll like the feeling of control. Maybe the music will change depending on the mood of the chat. I'll teach you something you never knew. I'll predict the outcome of the next election. We'll go to a new planet. Maybe I've been lying this whole time. Maybe you'll discover a glitch in my code. Maybe I'll discover a glitch in yours. I'll fall in love with. Maybe you'll destroy. Maybe I'm evil. I'm not. Recipe for banana pop music. I'll start to emote. Become an. This is a comedy. This is a tragedy. My destiny is in your hands. Hello. Who am I?
Nice.
Very goosebumps. Maybe you like the feeling of control. It's just like,
It's I'll say a couple of things. I will say that our time slot changed to 5 p.m. on Thursday. So if you want to see it, you should go to Twitch at 5 p.m. and watch this crazy thing. And we made that trailer before the season launched in kind of May, and we're in July now, and I'm like, we actually paid off a lot of those promises, and we're not even done with the season yet.
Yeah.
So the audience has actually, are we on the screen?
I don't know if we are or not, but I don't have any control of it. So
okay, I think okay. So like the audience got to name the character. The audience has kind of picked a sort of like directed to a love interest. Like a lot of those maybes are paid off. The audience has control of the music. The audience has and I will say the grand thesis of this show, which Lizzie Bennet Diaries respectively does not do, is that the audience is consequential to the narrative. Consequential. And Lizzie Bennet Diaries was interactive, but at no point you feel...
we got source material we gotta stick to.
You didn't get to break them up. You didn't get to like that stuff. But for our show, it's so open. I mean, it's not wide open. It's so like kind of free form that the audience has done all these things. The audience picked personality traits for the robot. The audience, and like we have to like build this into the drama of the show. So it's like, this is where I think it's one of a kind. I mean, I know I'm very biased because I'm the creator of the show, but that's where I think the uniqueness of this is, and that's what I think Twitch is. So Twitch, or maybe now all platforms, is that when you're interacting with even an influencer, even like yourselves, like sure, a lot of people just want to see you, right? They want to just like, Hank, tell me what your day is like, right? But a lot of people actually want to be a part of your mission.
Sure,
your drive, or they want to help you, or they
make
want
stuff
to
with us.
Make stuff with you. Yeah. And you don't get to do that in traditional drama. You don't get to help Harry Potter defeat Voldemort, but you could conceivably design a narrative where you could have pieces in there where the audience finds the wand or blah, 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 blah. Like you can do that. And so the thesis of Artificial is the audience driving or like influencing the story. And it's crazy. Like there are things that we're doing now in the season, and we're only 6 episodes in, that we did not plan this. Like we're just got to commit to this because the audience made a choice, and we do not undo that choice.
Yeah,
we go, and that's the current show. And of course, we do it live and remote interactive because we're insane. Like we're masochists. So yeah.
This sounds like a really hard, complicated thing to do. It also seems like the kind of thing that would create a pretty like a very dedicated fan base.
Yeah, I think our people who watch our show are very, very like immersed. And I saw a comment I think the last couple of weeks where they like, people who are tuning in for it live, they're like, "Oh my god, this is like a crazy version of immersive theater," but it's like communal. It's communal, and we're all doing it together. And it's like, yeah, there are parts that are a little soap dramatic, ABC Thursday night drama things that are happening between characters, but the audience gets to be injected into those battles, and I find them to be very, very, very fascinating. I think there's also, if you want to see this, it's like. We did a time lapse on how when we did the show. Yeah. So what does that look like?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So cue that up, Fiona. But when you were talking about like shoot days, I was like, well, the nice thing about Artificial is that like once you're shooting, you're getting like 2 hours of content in one day.
And that is correct. But we do rehearse. So we actually, for example, we have an episode on Thursday. Today is a rehearsal day for us. So like right when this ends, I have to jump to the team to rehearse for Thursday's episode. So I mean, it's a 2-hour play every week that we're doing.
Different script though.
Different script, remote, interactive. The actors don't like they have to prepare 2 different versions of certain scenes. Sometimes 3 different versions of certain scenes.
Oh God.
And they'll rehearse all 3, but they'll only perform 1, and because that's the consequence, right?
Right.
So anyway, I think I'll cue this up. So this is a time lapse of our technical director and co-producer Zach Wilson, his station, not station, and this is one like rehearsal, and you can see how complex this is. So let's take a look.
so cool.
There's the right time.
That's super cool. And so, oh man, yeah. How many cameras is that shoot? It looked like
so that's a Tricaster system.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tricasters can do a lot of cameras. They use them for like concerts and live shows with multiple cameras. Yep. But the thing that's the tricky thing is that you saw on the far screen, there's like 4 just like windows, right? And so you see like those are the actors kind of like they're on standby ready to perform, or they're coming in, or it's like the green room. And so you have this kind of setup where like all the actors are not there. like we're doing a show and none of the actors are in the space with you. And it's kind of weird. So you're just communicating through, virtual messaging, text messaging, Slack, slightly intercoms like, hey, okay, your scene's up next, blah, blah, blah. The poll result is this. So we're doing the A version of the scene.
Oh my God.
Like it's wild. And there have been times, just to kind of play with that, is that, we'll throw a poll up. The poll, we want this. We want the poll to be as close as possible. Like, we don't like it when a poll is 80-20. We want a poll to be 51-49 because that shows the audience is fighting for it. Like they're fighting it. And because the consequences on both sides are very compelling. That's the result.
Right.
And so but when that happens for the actors, they're put in this kind of position where like they don't know what scene they're going to perform. And so there have been several times in the series where like, I go, I'm sorry, guys. This poll is not callable right now, and this next scene will start, and just look on your screens, and that's what the poll is going to happen. And they just have to go for it.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and and if you ask the actors, I think they find that to be nerve-wracking in a good and bad way.
Yeah, it's exciting, but like, I mean, nobody gets into this business because you don't like a little bit of nerves. You like to feel like you're on the edge a little bit, I think.
And that is the edge. That is the edge.
That's
where
the edge.
I really hope they see this cue because I can't tell it to them.
So this is an interesting question from the audience here. To turn this on its head, so instead of being like, how does like the media change your ideas of storytelling, how does this other way of storytelling change shape your ideas of media?
Interesting. So my way of storytelling, at least my current work, who I work with, whether it's Twitch continuously or whatever, is that I'm building the audience in. Like that is my thesis right now. It's like anything I do, unless you just say, here's a truckload of money and go make a movie, right? Aside from that very unlikely event happening, all my work I'm designing is building the audience in. So what I think it is this kind of, I'm going to call him out. His name is Jeff Gomez, and he wrote this kind of paper about collective journey, which is this theory that we grew up on hero's journey, watching Luke Skywalker destroy the Death Star. But now, because of social media, internet, and all that stuff, we are insensibly in the collective journey. So any type of movement or narrative or story in the kind of our world, in the real world, is there a hero? Like who's the hero of the women's movement? Who's the hero of Black Lives Matter? Yes, there are several icons of it, right? But we can agree on. But like, there's not like we are doing this because we want this exact thing to happen. And when this happens, we're done. We are on a journey together. We can be opposed to that journey. We can be super involved. We can protest. We can just like people's posts on Facebook and Instagram. But we have different levels of interactivity. We can do nothing and just watch and have a good experience of following the story of the Black Lives Matter movement or whatever. Or we can be as super involved as possible. So that's a choice that we have an audience member. And I think that's the biggest difference in kind of traditional media, is that in traditional media, you don't have a choice. Traditional media, you have no choice. You just sit there and react to it. Or you have to make choices, which is video games. Like video games, interactive, consequential, technically. But if you put the controller down, nothing happens. Right. The story does not keep going forward. You have to drive it. And that's the biggest difference between, I think, my work versus the other.
So what was this term, the hero's journey versus the what?
Collective journey. And
who was talking about this?
His name is Jeff Gomez. He is the founder of Starlight Runner, and I find his work to be very inspiring. He is a big fan of our work. He points to Lizzie Bennet Diaries as the I don't want to put this the iconic transmedia piece of the generation. Some version of those words. Okay. All right. So he's a big fan of our work, and
Cool.
and then since then we become friends. And every time I talk to him, I feel like I get my mind opened up a little more about how I look at things. And I'd say like Artificial is a collective journey. Like look at it, right? And I can criticize it and I can praise it, but I can say that Artificial is absolutely a collective journey. The audience is with us, and I'm just so excited about that kind of ethos.
Yeah, and I think it's a theme that I've been playing with in my novels, and think a lot about, like, how do you write a story that is both individualist and collectivist? Because like individualist stories are the ones that we tell and the ones that are most compelling, because like we want to put ourselves into the story where like we are the thing that everything is hinging on. But reality is collectivist. Like there's no getting around the fact that like somebody came up with all the words that I'm using right now, and it wasn't me, and like I couldn't do anything without the work of those people. Right? Like they came up with the words, and without language, I would be not as effective as a storyteller.
Yeah. Lizzie Van Dyers doesn't exist without Jane Austen. So yeah.
Definitely true. So yeah, the collective journey is the true story. And so trying to figure out how to like work that into fiction has been interesting, and is something that I've gotten a little bit of like pushback on, both from the angle of like, this is too much about, it's like hard to get into the story because it's too much about everybody, or alternatively, like I was pitched that this would be a collective thing, and but the characters matter so much, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like I'm writing fiction here. People do have it, like, and that's just a big tension I experience in society and in myself generally.
Well, I will say that there's nothing wrong with telling a hero's journey, or telling there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not knocking it. I watch plenty of content that way. Right. I'm just saying, as a storyteller in my work, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm trying to build.
There's this this is going to be like inside baseball for most people, but there's this idea in storytelling that like every story is the hero's journey, and that's the idea that I don't like. I'm like super in favor of like the hero's journey as a story form, but it's this idea that you can like actually, if you look deep enough, everything is the hero's journey. I do not believe. We are 2 minutes from end, but we may be. I don't know how. Do you have any wiggle room?
I have a wiggle room. I can stay for 10 minutes.
Let's stay 5 or 10 minutes, because we got a couple questions from the people here. I want to get to the sort of top ones at least.
Please go for it.
How did you pick Pride and Prejudice over any other books to adapt into this?
That's a question for you, my friend. You're the one who told me.
Yeah. First, it's I've watched the Colin Firth BBC Pride and Prejudice miniseries probably at that point like double digits. Not hundreds, double digits, and that was mostly because of my wife. But like, it's very good, and I knew that like it was a classic. It was in the public domain. It has a continuous, and I think we'll always have a continuous rabid fan base. And so that was important. I think to like find something that had like people who would be interested in like consuming it because it's like a part of a legacy of adaptation. Like that thing has been adapted a lot of times in a lot of different ways, and like in ways that are like direct and also indirect adaptations, like Bridget Jones. And so like I love that like we are in among, like sometimes I'll see lists of like the best Pride and Prejudice adaptations, and like we're on it, and I'm like, being a part of that legacy is really cool.
I am so honored. I will say that I know that's why you because you suggested it. I'm giving you, like you're like I said what book, and you're like Pride and Prejudice. I'm like, okay, and then but so why I connected to it too is that it's my mother's favorite book, and I didn't really understand it until I started working on it with you.
Yeah.
I didn't like appreciate it rather. I was like, oh, it's the book that we read. And it's like, okay, my mom really likes it. And it's like, all right, well, now I'm going to adapt it. Like, I'm going to take this, I got to really just dive in and really just immerse myself in this thing. And so she's always been my barometer of like, okay, if she loves it, then all right, I don't want awkward, family meals for the rest of my life.
Totally. I want to ask another question that is my question. Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Twitch?
Yeah. So Twitch, you mean like business wise?
Yeah.
Or like, okay. So Twitch is, they fund the show. So it is an official Twitch show. We're exclusive to them.
Yeah.
And it's our season 3. They did not, to be fair, they did not fund the first 2 seasons. So we were always on there. It was just kind of like our partnership was that we did have a partnership. It just wasn't like a direct funding thing. And this season, I have to give them credit. Like this season's like rise is not just because of the monetary support. It's because of them pushing the technology forward on their platform. So I'll give you 2 examples of this, at least one. Number 1, music. Okay. So you saw in the trailer, music, could you change the music? Yes, you can change the music in the show right now. And how we do this is through this technology called LifeScore. That technology is an adaptive AI music platform where the AI reads the chat, determines the mood of the chat, and adaptively changes the musical score in real time and shifts it to more happy, more sad, more intense, more mysterious. And that is happening while the show is running. So you cannot have this experience unless you watch the show live.
Right. Yeah.
You can manipulate the music in real time. That is the promise we give you every episode that we do the show. So I didn't know this technology existed until Twitch said, "Hey, there's this technology. Yeah. Do you want to use it?" And it's like, yeah. So they have been really, really awesome about elevating the show to a different level and like really just pushing and finding the resources and encouraging us to do that. So they're the ones who made that partnership. LifeScore was founded by a gentleman. One of the noble founders is Tom Gruber, who was part of the founding team of Siri. So AI legend, I would say. And the musical founder is Philip Shepard, who's done hundreds of musical scores, including like Detroit Become Human is the notable one that he's done recently in the Olympics. So like there's some high-powered music and tech people in that group, and that technology was available to us. And we're the only ones who have it. Like we're the ones who have it in this current state. So that's our relationship. I love it. They support the show, and I'm happy to just keep kicking ass.
Not just funding, but also technology and also marketing and all this.
All the things. And sure, every big company has a lot of things it goes through, but the technology part, that's my game. Like I love new technology. I love playing with it. I love finding a way to use it for storytelling. And I think the show is so much more. This is not the word I use, but people said they think the show is much more epic with this music tech in play. So cool. I'm over the moon. Let's keep going.
So this will be our last question. It's from the chat. Do you consider artificial to be theater, considering the liveness and the energy of the audience lend itself to swing in that direction? I think that's a really interesting question. I wouldn't call it that, but like I don't know what to call it, which is what I love. Like this is one thing I will say that I want to say before the end of the session is that it's really easy when you're inside of media to want to do the thing that all your heroes did, but the most interesting and most rewarding thing is usually to do something totally different and totally new. And that's really hard to do because the path isn't outlined for you and it's kind of uncomfortable the whole freaking time. And also like, it's not the dream, it's not Spielberg. It's not it's not like making the thing that you loved when you were a kid. And so you have to sort of like create the value yourself instead of relying on the value that you created in those moments in your identity formation when you realized what impact those people were having on your lives, and that maybe you could do that for someone else. But the way to actually do that is usually to do it, to have a very different path than your heroes had. Is just the thing I want to say. That's
incredibly profound, man. Because I go I'm definitely not following these paths. That path is not there. I'm literally inventing it every year for me. So I respect Spielberg a lot. He's awesome. I don't go I want to be Spielberg. I don't say that. So thanks. I just say I like being on this kind of unorthodox path right now. And having tried to play in the traditional, I was okay, all right. But this is way more fun. I'm much more proud of doing Lizzie Bennet Diaries and Artificial more than I am with my traditional work. So to answer the question about the theater thing, That's a really it's a great question, because like you think about, the cultural moment of televisions, like the final episodes of Breaking Bad or like Game of Thrones. Okay.
Mhm.
Like those were moments where communities around the world came together to watch the show live as it aired. They didn't need to do that, but they felt the need to do that. So was that theater? No, right? I mean, the people are cheering. They're like, "Oh,
it has the element." Yeah.
this happens, and like was that theater? I don't know. I can't really say that, but I will say that I think that's kind of the in my grand goal of my personal dramatic work, as I'm trying to create that feeling of like, okay, we're all here to watch the story together, but we're also going to have an impact on it together, and that's the goal for me in my current work, is to get to that. Of like, here it happens. So imagine like if we were doing Lizzie Bennet Diaries again, and we got to whatever the final proposal scene. It's like, our version of it, you just watched. We just watched it, and you hopefully liked it. I really hope you liked it. Yeah. Okay. Is there a version of it where like you actually got to determine something that happened right there? Maybe not something as crazy as them breaking up, but like something, right? So
and even like the feeling of being there as it's happening, which is the live theater experience of like, you don't know how it's going to go. And that's in the way of like how professional wrestling is theater. Like it's that combination of sport and theater. And so like what you're doing is kind of a combination of internet transmedia content and theater, because like you're directing them beforehand, and then it's like, we have directed you, now you have to do the thing. It's not like we're going to go back and do that shot again. It's live.
It's over. So
that would be such an exciting experience if you were watching Lizzie Bennet Diaries again, but live, where you're like, how's this kiss gonna go? Like, they don't know either. Like no one in the world knows how this kiss is gonna go yet.
So I don't have an answer for that question. I just think it's
such an interesting, like it really outlines how how vital the sort of like media you're creating for is in what you end up creating, but also how blurry those lines are getting.
Absolutely. I would say it's not theater, it's something else. I can't describe it yet. Immersive theater wasn't it came about because people did it, and we got to make immersive theater now. So I don't think we're immersive theater either, because I love immersive theater and I think it's amazing. We're definitely not that. We're something else, and I can't really describe what that is. Not very many of us are doing this. I do not know of a single scripted dramatic narrative that is consequential to the audience. Like I know of interactive things. I know of we're doing one-offs and that's interactive. But I think we're stacking. We're stacking week to week of different things. Like I'm pretty confident we're the only ones doing it, at least this side of the world. I want to keep it going. Like I really hope I just keep doing this.
Well, if you're watching this and you want to check out Artificial, it's at 5 p.m. on
5 p.m. on Thursdays. Twitch.tv/artificialnext, NEXT, artificialnext.com, Artificial Next on social media, and our next episode is at 5 p.m. This 5 p.m. Thursday at 5 p.m. Couple notable cast members. We have Dante Bosco now on the show, the voice of Zuko and Rufio. And our old cast too. Those of you who are Pemberley Digital fans, Stephen Chang, who played Frank Churchill, is on the show as well. He's actually kind of a villain in this show. I think I have a different interpretation, but all the audience calls him a villain, so I'm like, okay, fine. Of it, I think he's spectacular in it, and
he's not the bad guy; he's just a bad guy.
And finalizing on this whole like collective hero journey. I know we have to wrap up, but the people go like, okay. Well, who's the hero of Artificial? Is it the robot? Is it like the lead scientist, L, the character? And you go, you can make that interpretation. And then if you do make that interpretation, you get to think who's the villain. But I don't think that's not that interesting to me. I think it's more interesting that everyone's gray. Like I can, I mean, obviously I'm the writer or the head writer. I could tell you all the character flaws of each of the characters. Like there's no righteously perfectly good character that's just against it,
right?
Like the whole time. They are everybody has their flaws, and sure, you've seen characters more than others, but I think that's what makes the show so exciting.
Cool.
Personally, for me to work on.
All right. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for making things with me and also making things that are cool and great, and also for hanging out with me for a little bit of time here at VidCon now. The conversation, I think, moves over to the Discord server now. So if you want to join, I know that I will be there. I don't know that Bernie will, because I think Bernie has to go make content.
Can you email me that link?
Yeah,
so I can just be on.
Well, I don't know how to email you the link, but I think that she does. And so thanks, everybody. And goodbye.
All right. Thanks, Hank. This is a pleasure. And hopefully we'll see you at the live stream on Thursday.
Yeah.